Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's time we talk about indirect and direct speech. Imagine if, imagine if there were no direct and indirect speech. By the way, direct and indirect speech is a way of repeating or reporting what someone else has said. We use it for communication or passing a message to a next person. So imagine if we didn't have direct and indirect speech. How would you tell your teacher what another learner has said? How can you tell someone else how you were treated wherever you were? Okay, but the good thing is we won't be listening to gossip. That's the good thing. Okay, now I'm going to allow my team members to indulge you on how we can use, what are the direct and indirect speech, and then how we can use them. The direct team will start.
As Simpile has said, we are team direct speech. So I'll start by defining what is direct speech. Direct speech is the way of reporting exactly what someone has said, preserving their original words and phrasing. It is often used in storytelling, dialogue, or when you want to convey someone's exact words or expressions. Now, in direct speech, we have punctuation marks that are used. Direct speech requires rules. So when you write there your direct speech, you have to have a certain punctuation marks that you use. The first one is that the comma separates the reporting clause from the quoted speech. Now the comma is placed inside the quotation marks if the sentence continues. The second one is that if the direct speech comes after the reported clause, a comma or a colon is placed before the quotation marks. Now the full stop, question mark, exclamation marks are placed inside the quotation marks if they belong to the quoted speech. So we are going to move to the key points to remember when you're dealing with direct speech. The first one is that always enclose your direct speech inside the quotation marks. Number two, you place your punctuation marks inside the quotation marks. Number three, you include your reporting clause to clarify who is speaking. Number four, you start the new paragraph each time the new speaker is speaking. Number five, you use the direct speech when you want to capture the speaker's exact words or tone. Now I'll give this opportunity to Komoto to speak about the characteristics of direct speech.
As they have told us about the key points to remember, now we are focusing on the characteristics of the direct speech. The first one is the quotation marks, whereby the quotation marks are enclosed in double quotation marks. Number two, the exact words. It produces the speaker's exact words. Number three, the verb tenses consistency. The verb tenses remain the same as the original statement. For the pronoun consistency, pronouns remain the same as the original statement. 5. There is no change in person, place, or time. First, second, and third person remain consistency. Pronouns and adverbs remain the same, and no shift from present, past, or future. Number 6, we identify the text. The uses of identifying text, example as said, exclaimed, or asked. Then we are focusing on the types of the direct speech. We have the declarative direct speech, which state the facts or opinion. The example is the quotation marks, the capital of France is Paris, said the teacher. This is a statement or is a fact or a opinion. The second is interrogative direct speech. This one asks the question. Example, what's the time? Asked John. The third one is exclamatory direct speech, which expresses strong emotions. Example, wow, that's amazing, exclaimed Emily. Now we have the examples of the direct speech. First one, I'm going to the store, said John. Second one, she's very happy, exclaimed Emily. 3, what's your name? Asked the teacher. Now we have the advantages in the direct speech. The first one, the direct speech has a clarity and a precision. It conveys emotion and the emphasis. Then it reports the exact words. Now, Langa, please tell us about the tenses of the direct speech.
Okay, now since they have told you about the characteristics of direct speech, I'll be dwelling much more on the tenses of what? Of direct speech. So in this case, in direct speech, the tenses used by the speaker remains exactly as it is when spoken. There is no need to change the tenses unless you are changing from direct to indirect speech. So in this case, I'm having examples of what? Of tenses of what? Of direct speeches. The present tense. So in direct speech, one will say, or it reads like this. She says, quotation marks, opening quotation marks, I love pizza, and close quotation marks. So the present tense is something that the person is saying right now. So now, whenever we move into the past tense, which it was something that was said before, then in direct speech, he said, opening quotation marks, I finished my homework, close quotation mark. So now, if ever you're looking at at this word, says and said. So now there it was what? It is the present tense. And then in past tense, it has changed into what? Into said. So now it means the tenses now they change according to when was that phrase or clause said at that time. So moving forward, the future tense. In direct speech, they said we will go to the party tomorrow. So now the said, it remains the same, but then now what changes will be what? Will be the phrase. How is the phrase constructed? How is the phrase is? So now that's where you're going to say it's something that's going to happen, but then the third part here, the word said, it remains the same just because it is something that is said by someone else. And then they are referring to what? To an event that is going to happen. So that is how tenses of what? Of direct speeches, this is how they change. So from this case in time, I'll now let the indirect speech team to tell you about indirect speech.
Okay, so now that you know about direct speech, we are team indirect speech and we are going to educate you more about indirect speech. Indirect speech, I'm going to do the definition, I'll do the quotation mark, I'll do the punctuations, and I'll also do the key points to remember. Indirect speech is when you report what someone said without using their exact words. It is a reported speech. It is not your exact word, but it is what you say. It is what you say that you explain what somebody else has said. So now moving to quotation marks. In indirect speech, we do not have quotation. We do not use quotation marks. When converting direct speech to indirect speech, we remove the quotation marks. Moving to the punctuation. First of all, we talked about quotation marks, which means we really do not use the quotation marks in indirect speech. And then we use the commas. We use the commas to separate the clauses within the reported speech. And then we use the exclamation mark, full stop, and question marks at the end of the sentence. Key points to remember is that there are no quotation marks. There is a change in verb tense, and there is a change in pronouns, and there is also a use of reporting verbs. Now I'll give Deboho to tell you more about the characteristics of indirect speech.
Now, proceeding with the characteristics of indirect speech, first of all, we have that it reports what someone said without quotation. And then number two, it is introduced by reporting verbs like said, told, or asked. And then we now, for that characteristic, we have no quotation marks. And then number four, it changes the tense. Number five, it changes the pronoun. Number five, it changes the time and place expressions. So now I'm going to proceed to the types of indirect speech. We have indirect statement, which reports a statement. For example, he said he was going to the show. That's as simple as it is. And number two, we have indirect question. which reports a question. For example, she asked if I was happy. It was a question before, but now it is indirectly a question in indirect speech. For the third example the third type is going to be indirect command, meaning that it reports a command or a request. For example, he told me to finish the homework. And then number 4, we have indirect exclamation, which reports an exclamation. For example, she exclaimed that she was extremely happy. Those are the examples. And then we have advantages and disadvantages of indirect speech. In advantages of indirect speech, number 1, we have conciseness, which reports conversations efficiently. Number 2, we have clarity, which avoids confusion from multiple quotation marks. We have number 3, flexibility. The sentences become flexible because now it allows for tenses to change and summarization is allowed. Again. And then number 4, which is formality, suitable for formal writing and reporting. Then we have number 5, which is objectivity, which reduces emotional tone and emphasis. Yeah? And then we have number 6, which is easier narration. It simplifies storytelling and dialogues. Yeah? So now, our next speaker is going to speak about the tenses and in indirect speech.
Okay, now that Tebogo has told us about the advantages and the disadvantages of the indirect speech, these are the tenses that have been used. With the information above, you will notice that all that was happening throughout the indirect speech. It's visible here. So with the tenses, we have 3 types of tenses, which is the present tense, past, and the future tense. So when we look at the present tense, it's something that is said now immediately. It's just that someone else is saying what someone else has just said just right now. Okay, let's take the first one. We know that in present tense we have the simple present tense, the present continuous, and the present perfect tense. With the simple present tense, we have an example that says, she says she went to the store. She says it right now. I'm just passing the message. What did she say? In case you didn't hear it. She says she went to the store. That is the simple present tense. On to the next one. We have Thando says they are reading a book. Thando says they are reading the book is the present continuous. You remember when we're talking about tenses, when it's continuous tense, it has to have a verb that has an ing. The reading has an ing, so that's how you identify that it is the present tense, which is present continuous. That is the present continuous tense. Now we move on to the next example, which says she says she studied, which is the present perfect tense. When we talk about the present perfect tense, it's a bit shorter than the present simple tense. In present simple tense, it's more clearer. When in present perfect tense, it's a tense that is more advanced than the simple present tense. Okay, we move to the past tense. So past tense, as in present tense, something that happens now. It's just happened now. In case you didn't hear it now. Now, when we go to the past tense, it's something that has happened in the morning, something that happened yesterday or previously, but then it did not happen now. How do we see that? We see that by past tense. You know your verbs in past tense. So here, our first example is we have the past simple tense, which is they said they went to town. They said they went to town. This is the went. You see the verb? The verb is in past tense. So this is the past simple tense. They said they went to town. We move on to the next example. The next example, Themba said he was studying when you called. This is the past continuous. Remember continuous. Studying. This is the past continuous. For you to know, you just have to know there's an ing, then it's present or past continuous or future continuous. It's continuous at the end. And then the last one in the past tense, we say, Buhle said they have studied. Remember in the present tense, it was she says she studied. So it's still the same thing, but this thing is, the difference is the other one is in present, the other one is in the past. Moving on to the future tense. When we move to the future tense, it's something that will happen. It might happen tomorrow, it might happen in the evening, it might happen next week or when. So the first example that we have, we say Tembi says she will go to the store tomorrow. You see, something that can happen tomorrow. This is the future simple tense. So Tembi has said that, he said that before. When she said it before, she was talking about, yes, maybe she said it in the morning, talking about what she's gonna do when tomorrow. That is the future tense. So, and we move on to the future continuous. Tuli says she will be going to school tomorrow. You remember the ing, it also applies here in the future tense. It's the future continuous. The last example says, they say they will have studied by then. So it's like they said they will have studied by then. When the test comes, they will have studied. They're gonna study maybe tomorrow or when, but then before the test comes, they will have studied. And then we move to conclude our presentation about indirect and direct speech, and I will allow my team member to close it up.
In conclusion, I would like us to go back to the line that says the power of precise copy. This line simply means the indirect and direct speech has power on how we communicate every day. Indirect speech and direct speech help us to communicate clearly and accurately. Using them correctly and ensures that we emphasize our thoughts and ideas without misunderstanding. Here are some key takeaways that I would like for you to take, and when you came across direct and indirect speech, you must remember them. So the first key takeaway says, direct speech reports exact words using quotation marks. As the team direct explained to you what is direct speech, I hope you guys still remember the explanation of direct speech. The second key takeaway says, indirect speech conveys the message without exact words. And again, team indirect speech taught us what is indirect speech. And that's all for today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed and understood our lesson. Thank you.